This video is a follow-up on my last Subnautica video, which has had excellent growth for my small channel. This has been doing me wonders at the beginning of each video, so I'd like to ask you once more to like and subscribe for more videos related to Subnautica if that's what you would like to see. In this video, I'm going to do my best to come up with an escape route for every member of the Aurora. I know this isn't 100% plausible, but if I had prep time, this is how I would have dealt with each situation. Cut me some slack. Lifepods 4 and 13 would have been incredibly hard to survive. Starting with Lifepod 2, which landed 500 meters down in the blood kelp zone in decent proximity to a ghost leviathan. We know it was survivable because CTOU managed to live a long time after escaping the Lifepod. She just shouldn't have attempted visiting the crash zone, instead opting to live like the remaining 3 members of the Degassi crew on the floating islands. At least waiting for any remaining Aurora crew to send transmissions. Anything Riley did, CTOU could have done as well. It was unwise to transverse to the Aurora so early into it being crashed. Lifepod 3 is mind-numbingly easy to survive, landing 18 meters under the surface in the kelp forest. If the people would have exited the Lifepod and swam towards the safe shallows instead of the kelp forest, they could have very easily avoided the stalkers and or sand sharks depending on where they went. They would have had a stable food and water supply, and they would have stumbled across Lifepod 5 and been able to wake up Riley and piece together what happened to the crew. Possibly being able to find CTOU and Officer Keene, thus having a 5-survivor crew. A matter of fact, if Subnautica were to implement multiplayer, they should do it where players 2 and 3 wake up in Lifepod 3. This is going to be the hardest part of the video, so let's just get it out the way. Lifepod 4 is the lifepod that landed directly next to the Aurora and was subsequently attacked and killed by presumably 2 Reaper Leviathans. The only way that I can think of this being avoidable is if the person in Lifepod 4 waited for the Reaper to push their lifepod closer to the Aurora before deploying the creature decoy, or waiting for the Reapers to attack the Lifepod and slipping out the top or bottom of the Lifepod respectively, and then deploying the creature decoy, buying them even a few more seconds. They could have even waited for the Reapers to go feeding, attacking nearby stalkers or even smaller fish nearby. All of this isn't guaranteed, but every second counts in an unadvantageous situation such as this. Lifepod 5 survived no matter what, which is cool, but let's talk about what Riley could have done wrong. If he would have been passed out or inhaled too much smoke, he could have died in the Lifepod, and honestly I'm surprised he didn't, because he was passed out inhaling smoke for 3 hours and also suffered head trauma in the crash, which would have led me to believe that Riley was a robot if he couldn't contract the Kara bacterium, proving him to be organic. Lifepod 6 could have survived easily. Let me explain. Lifepod 6 landed 120 meters down in the grassy plateaus. Lifepod 6 contained the Aurora's head human resource officer and a civilian who was also traveling on the Aurora. The reason they died in-game is because the civilian in the Lifepod lit a flare inside the Lifepod as an attempt to receive attention, in hopes the flame wouldn't go out on the way up from the Lifepod to the surface, I suppose. This would cause the oxygen line to explode immediately, killing both the human resource officer and the civilian. If the civilian would have listened to the Aurora's human resource officer, this would have been easy. Well, not easy per se, but a lot more feasible than it would have seemed for Riley, with the only thing being difficult for them being not landing above the water. But they could have very easily made like the Degassi crew, or even made a base in the nearby safe shallows. Lifepod 7 was stranded 180 meters down in the crag field. There was 1 person on board and their fabricator was bust. This is a stretch, but Lifepod 7 needed a source of light. If they had any flares or light inside the Lifepod, they should have opened the top of the pod and swam straight up, because funny enough, while doing research and checking myself for this video, I noticed that in the PDA entrance for bone sharks, they were cited to have possibly been attracted to light sources. This means that the natural light of the Lifepod would have been enough to buy a little time while they swam up for the surface and towards the lighter areas of the crater. Lifepod 12 found himself stranded on the ocean bed 270 meters deep in the bulb zone. This one was challenging because Danby was injured and had already developed the Kara bacterium. The only way I could think of Danby being able to do anything is if he could have made some sort of flotation device. He could have even made an attempt to use the Lifepod's medkit fabricator to heal his wounds and try for the safe shallows or dry land. He would have been able to see Lifepod 5 off in the distance and perhaps been able to swim towards it, waking up Riley and then speeding up, curing the Kara bacterium before Danby would have died from it. Lifepod 13. Okay, hear me out. Jochiko needed to jump out of the life pod mid-air and pencil dive into the water and make sure he didn't hurt his body turning himself into a dart. When he entered the water, this would cause minimalistic damage to his body, I think, and then he would have needed to swim back up to the surface, all the while holding his breath and not putting himself near any apex predators. Lifepod 13 was kind of destined for death, so tell me what you guys think Joshi could have done to save himself from dying in Lifepod 13. Lifepod 17 contained Ozzy, who just couldn't believe his situation, landing in the grassy plateaus close to where the crab snakes lurk in a cave. Crab snakes aren't notoriously aggressive, as the Degassi crew had a base in the Jelly Shroom Cave, which is home to the crab snakes, and even drawing from Bart and the Degassi crew's logs, he wasn't terrified of the crab snakes, instead infatuated with them along with all the alien life found on planet 4546b. Instead of talking about Lifepod 19, once again we're going to return to talking about Officer Keene. Keene, as far as we know, is still alive with no confirmed body, but general consensus is that Keene was killed by Reapers, Warpers, or even that he killed CTOU and then went on to die. But what we do know is that Keene and CTOU should have waited longer on the floating islands for more people. Riley was able to make a whole spaceship and travel back home, while also single-handedly saving an entire planet from a life-threatening alien bacteria that a whole group of precursors couldn't stop from spreading. Riley ran aside, there are at least 8 people I can think of off the top of my head who could have survived the Aurora crash with ease, with those being the crew in Lifepods 2, 3, 5, 6, and 19. Now, while Keene and CTOU went through something that wasn't that easy, they really made it look easy, so they still could have lived. Captain Hollister could have lived momentarily by going for a life pod instead of steering the ship towards the crater, and maybe even being able to salvage prawn suits and other vehicles from the ship to make their way towards the crater whilst fighting through Ghost Leviathan after Ghost Leviathan. And just maybe, something entirely unforeseen, something bigger, something that doesn't want us down there. I want to thank you guys for your viewership, as the last video did so well in just 6 days. I wanted to give you guys some theories to think on, and as always, please check out my other videos. If you haven't, you might find something you like. Please consider a like and a subscription so I can continue to grow, and let me know what survival theories you guys have crafted, and do you think they might be better than mine? Please let me know in the comments, and I encourage everyone else to go check those out. Have a good one.